You're listening to the Bare Metal Cyber Prepcast, created to help you succeed in your educational journey. Learn more at baremetalcyber.com, where additional prepcasts, books, and training materials await. Let's get started. Before candidates can sit for the PMI-ACP exam, they must first meet specific eligibility requirements designed to ensure a baseline of professional readiness. These requirements combine elements of agile experience, general project exposure, and formal training in agile practices. The intent is not to gatekeep arbitrarily, but to confirm that candidates bring real-world context to the assessment. Without this foundation, the exam's scenario-based items would lack relevance, and judgments would feel abstract rather than grounded. For example, a professional who has spent time on cross-functional project teams, regardless of title, is better positioned to appreciate questions about backlog refinement or stakeholder collaboration. This eligibility framework thus acts as both a threshold and a signal. Only those with proven involvement in agile work are invited to demonstrate their competence at a higher, standardized level. Agile experience can come from many sources, reflecting the broad application of agile principles across industries and frameworks. PMI does not restrict eligibility to those who have worked exclusively with Scrum or Kanban. Instead, it recognizes that agile manifests differently depending on context, from software development teams using extreme programming to marketing departments experimenting with lean. What matters most is that the candidate can demonstrate cross-functional responsibilities where agile principles were genuinely applied. For instance, facilitating daily stand-ups, refining backlogs, or measuring flow all qualify as valid agile experience, even if the setting was outside of traditional IT. This inclusivity ensures that the credential reflects Agile's adaptability, valuing competence across varied domains rather than limiting recognition to one narrow methodology. In addition to experience, PMI requires candidates to complete verifiable training hours in agile practices. These contact hours can be satisfied through in-person courses, virtual classrooms, or online learning modules provided by recognized education providers. The emphasis here is not on attendance alone, but on exposure to both foundational and applied topics. Foundational elements might include agile values, iterative delivery, or team roles, while applied components extend to estimation techniques, stakeholder engagement, and delivery metrics. Documented training demonstrates a commitment to formal study and provides shared terminology that supports fairness in assessment. Much like continuing education in professional practice, these training hours establish a baseline of common knowledge, ensuring that all candidates start the exam journey with exposure to structured, credible instruction. The application process itself is designed to capture not just eligibility data, but a narrative of professional practice. Candidates must describe their roles, projects, timeframes, and outcomes in concise but meaningful ways. These narratives are not lengthy essays, but structured statements aligned to the examination content outline. For example, a candidate might note that during a 2-year assignment, they facilitated sprint planning sessions, guided backlog prioritization, and worked with stakeholders to deliver incremental value. Such records provide context that supports eligibility claims while also reinforcing the ethical principle of honesty in credentialing. Crafting these narratives thoughtfully also prepares candidates mentally, as it forces reflection on past agile experiences that can later serve as mental anchors during exam scenarios. A critical element of the application is the attestation to professional conduct and accuracy of records. By submitting the application, candidates formally affirm that the information provided is truthful and that their behavior will align with PMI's Code of Ethics. This commitment is not symbolic. It establishes the ethical foundation of the credentialing process. Certification depends on trust. Employers, clients, and colleagues assume that those holding the PMI-ACP have earned it through honest effort. Misrepresentation of experience or education undermines that trust. By embedding this attestation, PMI makes clear that earning the credential is not only about competence, but also about character. Candidates therefore step into the process not just as learners, but as professionals accountable to a broader standard of integrity. Submitting the application involves a sequence of steps that guide candidates from entry of information to final acknowledgement. The process begins with recording agile and project experience, followed by entering details about education and training hours. Once these inputs are complete, candidates review their statements carefully before providing final acknowledgement. Only then do they move to the payment stage, which unlocks the ability to schedule the exam. Each step has been designed for clarity, but the burden rests on candidates to ensure accuracy and completeness. Much like preparing a deliverable for a client, the application must be polished and error-free before submission. By approaching the process deliberately, candidates reduce the risk of delays or rejections and demonstrate the professionalism expected of agile practitioners. One aspect that candidates must prepare for is the possibility of an audit. PMI conducts random and targeted audits to verify the integrity of applications. If selected, candidates will be asked to provide supporting documents such as proof of education, certificates of training, or letters verifying project experience. Clear timelines are given for submitting this information, and failure to comply can jeopardize eligibility. While the audit may feel daunting, it is ultimately a safeguard that protects the credibility of the certification. Much like quality assurance in a project, audits ensure that the process yields trustworthy outcomes. Candidates who have kept accurate records and can substantiate their claims usually find the process straightforward, though it reinforces the importance of honesty and preparedness from the start. Payment of fees is another practical step that can involve different arrangements depending on the candidate's situation. Some pay directly, while others use vouchers provided by employers or sponsors. Receipts should be retained, especially when reimbursement processes are in place. PMI also accommodates employer sponsorship, recognizing that many organizations invest in certification as part of workforce development. Managing these financial aspects carefully ensures that logistical issues do not become obstacles to scheduling the exam. Candidates should treat this step with the same care they would apply to budgeting in a project, confirming amounts, tracking receipts, and planning for contingencies. Financial clarity avoids stress and ensures a smooth path to the scheduling phase. PMI membership is an optional consideration that can influence costs and access to resources, but does not alter eligibility itself. Members often benefit from reduced exam fees, access to publications, and inclusion in a professional network. However, non-members remain equally eligible to apply and sit for the exam. The decision to join PMI should therefore be strategic. Candidates may weigh potential savings and resource access against membership costs. For some, the professional development opportunities alone justify the choice, while others may prefer to focus narrowly on the credential. Regardless, membership considerations exist outside the core eligibility framework, ensuring that certification remains accessible to anyone who meets the requirements. Once approved, candidates receive an eligibility window during which they must schedule and sit for the exam. This window typically spans several months, providing flexibility to plan preparation while also preventing indefinite delays. Managing this window is essential, as failure to schedule within the time frame requires reapplication. The window also structures retake opportunities, ensuring that candidates use their attempts wisely. This system mirrors time boxing in agile practice. A bounded period encourages focus, prioritization, and delivery. Candidates who plan backward from the end of the window are more likely to balance study, scheduling, and life commitments effectively, reducing last-minute stress and maximizing readiness. Retake parameters are another important aspect of the process. If a candidate does not pass, they are typically required to wait a defined period before reattempting. Additionally, there are caps on the number of attempts within the eligibility window. These rules are designed not as punishment, but as encouragement to reflect and prepare more deeply. Rapid, non-reflective retakes undermine the learning process and the integrity of the credential. By imposing waiting periods, PMI ensures that candidates re-enter with improved understanding rather than repeating the same mistakes. For learners, this structure underscores the importance of resilience and adaptation. Failure is not final, but progress requires reflection and deliberate improvement. As part of the application process, PMI outlines its practices for data privacy and record retention. Personal information, including contact details, education, and experience, is stored securely within the application portal. Retention policies ensure that data is kept only as long as necessary to support credentialing processes and compliance requirements. This transparency matters in a digital age where privacy is a growing concern. By respecting candidate data, PMI demonstrates the same ethical standards it expects from practitioners. For candidates, understanding these policies provides reassurance that sensitive information is being handled responsibly, aligning the application experience with broader values of trust and integrity. Accessibility accommodations are another critical dimension of eligibility and application. Candidates with documented needs, such as learning differences, mobility challenges, or health conditions, can request accommodations to ensure equitable access to the exam. This requires advanced planning, with documentation provided so that arrangements can be made without disrupting exam integrity. Accommodations might include additional time, alternative seating, or adaptive technologies. The process underscores PMI's commitment to inclusivity, ensuring that certification reflects competence rather than circumstance. For candidates, requesting accommodations is not a weakness but a responsible step toward fairness. It mirrors Agile's value of respect for people, acknowledging diverse needs while upholding consistent standards for performance. Throughout the process, communication remains steady and predictable. Candidates receive notifications through their PMI accounts and by email, signaling key milestones such as application approval, audit selection, or scheduling availability. These updates provide transparency and reduce uncertainty. By checking messages regularly, candidates can avoid missing deadlines or overlooking required actions. This cadence of communication mirrors the transparency Agile teams cultivate through stand-ups and information radiators. For candidates, it provides reassurance that the process is moving forward and highlights their responsibility to stay engaged. Active attention to these communications ensures that no preventable administrative errors derail progress toward exam readiness. For more cyber-related content and books, please check out cyberauthor.me. Also, there are other prepcasts on cybersecurity and more at baremetalcyber.com. Scheduling the exam is the first major step once eligibility has been confirmed, and candidates have two main choices: secure test centers or online proctoring. Each option carries advantages, and the decision should align with personal circumstances. Test centers provide a controlled, distraction-free environment, but require travel and scheduling within business hours. Online proctoring offers convenience and flexibility, but it demands a private space and reliable internet. Time zone awareness becomes crucial, especially for those booking online sessions. Scheduling during one's personal peak performance window, whether morning, afternoon, or evening, can significantly affect results. For example, a morning-oriented learner may perform better with a test scheduled shortly after waking, while others may thrive later in the day. Just as Agile teams plan sprints around capacity and rhythm, candidates should schedule their exam to maximize focus and energy. Identity verification is a strict requirement at both test centers and online sessions, ensuring the exam is taken by the registered individual. Candidates must present valid, government-issued identification, and the name on this ID must exactly match the name used during registration. Even small discrepancies, such as nicknames or missing middle initials, can create problems. Some candidates underestimate the importance of this match, only to face delays or denied entry on test day. Verifying documents well in advance prevents stress and ensures smooth check-in. This requirement underscores the seriousness of certification. The credential is tied to an individual's professional reputation, and maintaining security begins with verifying who is taking the test. Identity checks mirror Agile's emphasis on accountability, reinforcing that outcomes are personal and tied to professional credibility. The check-in process is structured to create a secure testing environment. At a physical test center, candidates typically present identification, undergo photo capture, and may have fingerprints or palm scans recorded depending on local requirements. Belongings are stored in lockers, and only approved items such as identification and sometimes comfort items like tissues are allowed in the exam room. Online check-ins involve similar steps, with candidates showing identification to a proctor via webcam, capturing photos, and scanning the room to confirm it is free of prohibited materials. Instructions are always provided by the delivery partner, and following them carefully avoids unnecessary complications. Much like a team aligning on a definition of done, candidates benefit from clarity about expectations. The check-in ritual is designed not to intimidate but to preserve fairness across all test takers. Personal item restrictions form a consistent policy across both delivery options. Bags, phones, notebooks, watches, and even water bottles are typically disallowed unless explicitly permitted. At test centers, items are stored securely, while online candidates must demonstrate a clear desk and environment. Violations of these policies, even if unintentional, can lead to disqualification. For example, leaving a smartwatch on during the exam, even without using it, may be interpreted as a breach. These rules protect the integrity of the credential and ensure that no candidate gains an unfair advantage. Understanding and preparing for them in advance prevents stress. Just as agile projects emphasize clear boundaries and agreements, exam rules set a shared baseline that enables fairness. Candidates who respect these boundaries demonstrate professionalism before they even begin answering questions. For those opting for online proctoring, additional standards apply to the testing environment. The space must be private, with no interruptions from colleagues, family members, or pets. The desk should be clear, the computer camera and microphone functional, and the internet stable. A system test, usually available beforehand, checks whether the device and network meet requirements. Ignoring this step risks last-minute technical issues. The purpose of these standards is to recreate test center conditions in a distributed setting, ensuring results remain valid. For learners, setting up the environment can be seen as a form of sprint planning. Invest time upfront to prevent disruptions mid-delivery. Creating a controlled space helps preserve focus, ensuring that performance reflects competence rather than environmental distractions. Conduct rules during the exam are explicit and enforced to maintain fairness. At test centers, candidates are monitored through cameras and staff observation. Online, proctors watch via webcam and software that tracks screen activity. Movement, communication, or unusual behavior may be flagged as violations. For example, speaking aloud, covering the camera, or looking away repeatedly could trigger warnings. These rules may feel strict, but they ensure that everyone is held to the same standard. By removing opportunities for misconduct, PMI protects the value of the certification. For candidates, compliance with conduct rules is straightforward. Remain professional, focused, and transparent throughout. The discipline mirrors agile practice, where teams agree on working agreements that sustain trust and collaboration. Certification integrity depends on this same kind of mutual respect for rules. Break policies vary depending on whether the exam is delivered at a test center or online. In test centers, unscheduled breaks may be permitted, but the exam clock continues running. In online settings, policies are more restrictive, as leaving the camera view may violate rules. Some exams provide built-in breaks, clearly designated and timed. Understanding these rules beforehand helps candidates manage hydration, nutrition, and comfort. Planning for breaks prevents fatigue-induced performance drops while staying within regulations. For example, a candidate may plan to pause briefly after 90 minutes at a test center, but in an online environment, they may need to complete the exam in one sitting. Break policies reflect the balance between fairness and practicality, ensuring candidates perform at their best without compromising security. Technical disruptions, though rare, are possible and are accounted for in exam procedures. If internet connectivity drops or a system error occurs, proctors are trained to intervene and provide guidance. Candidates are responsible for following instructions, documenting the issue, and cooperating fully. Incident reports are generated to ensure that outcomes remain fair, with cases reviewed before results are finalized. While disruptions can feel stressful, knowing that procedures exist for resolution reduces anxiety. It is helpful to treat these scenarios like project risks, anticipate potential issues, understand contingency plans, and remain calm under pressure. By maintaining composure, candidates not only protect their own performance, but also contribute to the professionalism expected in certification settings. When the exam concludes, results are typically reported quickly through the candidate portal. The report provides an overall outcome pass or fail, along with domain-level performance indicators. These indicators highlight strengths and areas for improvement, even for those who pass. For example, a candidate may succeed overall but see below-target performance in the leadership domain, signaling a need for growth in that area. This structured feedback makes the exam more than a gatekeeping mechanism. It becomes a diagnostic tool for professional development. Much like sprint reviews, where teams examine outcomes and identify improvements, the score report guides ongoing learning. Candidates should view the report not as an endpoint, but as a springboard for continued growth in agile practice. If retakes are required, scheduling guidance ensures candidates adhere to waiting periods and eligibility constraints. These rules prevent immediate resits, which often reflect reaction rather than reflection. By spacing attempts, PMI encourages candidates to absorb feedback, strengthen weak areas, and return better prepared. While waiting can be frustrating, it reflects the philosophy of deliberate practice. Just as agile teams pause to inspect and adapt before launching the next sprint, learners benefit from this forced reflection cycle. Retake scheduling is therefore not a barrier but a mechanism for protecting the credibility of the credential and ensuring that eventual success represents true improvement rather than brute repetition. Security commitments extend beyond test day. All candidates agree to non-disclosure rules that prohibit discussing exam content. This protects the item bank and ensures future candidates face a fair challenge. Violations can result in revocation of certification and bans from future exams. These commitments mirror professional confidentiality standards, where sensitive information must be safeguarded. Candidates should recognize that respecting non-disclosure is not just about protecting PMI, but about preserving the integrity of the credential they now hold. Integrity does not end at passing the exam. It continues as an expectation of certified professionals who model ethical behavior in their community. Despite best efforts, irregularities may occur, and PMI provides incident review and appeals pathways. If environmental issues, technical failures, or administrative errors affect a sitting, candidates can file a case for resolution. These processes exist to ensure fairness, reinforcing PMI's commitment to transparency and accountability. Appeals provide candidates with a formal voice, preventing them from feeling powerless in the face of uncontrollable circumstances. The existence of these channels demonstrates that certification is not rigid or unfeeling, but governed by principles of justice. For learners, knowing that recourse exists provides reassurance, allowing them to focus on performance rather than worry about what-if scenarios. After the exam, candidates gain access to digital credentials, often through secure portals that allow them to display their certification status. This step marks the transition from preparation to professional recognition. At the same time, candidates are reminded of ongoing maintenance requirements, such as earning professional development units to sustain certification. These expectations reinforce that learning does not end with the exam but continues as a professional responsibility. In this sense, the exam is a milestone, not a finish line. Agile practice thrives on continuous improvement, and certification maintenance embodies the same principle. Successful candidates step into a cycle of learning that keeps their skills fresh and their credential relevant over time. Record-keeping consistency plays an understated but important role in the certification process, ensuring that names, addresses, and identification documents match across the application, scheduling system, and exam day verification prevents frustrating mismatches. Even minor inconsistencies can create delays or denials. By treating personal information with the same precision applied to project documentation, candidates prevent administrative obstacles. This practice is not just bureaucratic detail, it reflects professional discipline. Just as project success often depends on accurate records, smooth certification depends on careful alignment of information. For candidates, this attention to detail is one more step in demonstrating readiness for the responsibilities that come with holding the PMI-ACP credential. In summary, exam day logistics encompass far more than simply answering questions. They involve scheduling strategically, verifying identity, complying with security policies, and managing the environment for peak performance. They also include knowing what to do in case of disruptions, respecting non-disclosure agreements, and preparing for post-exam responsibilities. Together with the eligibility and application steps, these logistics form the complete path from aspiration to certification. A smooth experience depends on careful preparation, disciplined adherence to rules, and professional conduct throughout. Just as agile projects succeed when planning, execution, and inspection are aligned, candidates succeed when every part of this journey is managed with foresight and responsibility. Thanks for tuning in to the Bare Metal Cyber Prepcast, your trusted source for cybersecurity news and insights. Remember to subscribe at baremetalcyber.com so you never miss an update. And visit cyberauthor.me for best-selling cybersecurity books that equip you with expert knowledge. Until next time, stay secure and stay vigilant.